Kristen is our presenter today on a very nice topic here. So she should be able to, hopefully you guys should see her screen. We're gonna get her started and we will have time at the end to answer any questions that anyone has. So Kristen, I'm gonna pass it over to you to get started on today's transit tidbit.
All right. Thank you, Amy. And Amy, will you be also monitoring the chat so people can enter questions in there?
Yes, I will be. So
Okay,
if you have questions too,
perfect.
please feel free to put them in chat.
Perfect. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. It's nice and cold and early this morning, but the sun's shining, so we'll take that. So this morning's transit tidbits, we are just going to go through our delinquent reporting and contract non-performance penalties policy. We are updating that effective January 1st. So we just wanted to kind of explain the why behind the update and the change, and just let you know the background and what led us here. Well, my slides aren't wanting to go. There we go. Okay. So as you all know, we have many deadlines and due dates and time limits and et cetera, that all the transit agencies need to follow. And actually, the regional and small urbans have to do even more with Iowa DOT just because we are the recipient and have to make sure we submit everything that the regionals and small urban transit agencies send to us. So those are always outlined in the Transit Manager's Handbook. And I just did a screenshot here of the beginning of the year, the state fiscal year as deadlines. And we try to keep those updated and have those current so that people can reference that if they need to know when things are due, although they don't change too often. So nothing too new or revolutionary about what's on there. But that's where those are located if you're ever interested in knowing timing on different reporting. And we have those deadlines because we do have to report to FTA. We have state auditors looking at things with our own books at the DOT. So there's just a number of different deadlines that we also need to meet on your behalf in order to keep all of the different funding sources flowing. So back in 2018, we did implement the original delinquent reporting and contract non-performance penalties policy. I know that rolls right off the tongue. And it allowed Iowa DOT to withhold state transit assistance formula funding monthly for any late reports that had missed deadlines. So we did it in a stepped approach where just the very first month after the deadline, we would hold the STA, but those would be released if the delinquency was rectified in that calendar month. By the time the second month rolled around, then we would still hold that STA, but we would also send a letter to the Transit Agency Board of Directors or the governing body like a city council. And again, releasing those STA funds without further action if the delinquency was rectified that month. Third month, and then any subsequent months after that, again, holding STA, but also we would be holding all FTA funding, including your operating or capital monies, and your STA special project funds could be held. And all of that would be held until the delinquency was rectified. So just trying to, still release the money back to the transit agencies. So in the end, everything would come out, even, but at the same time, needing to make sure we had a little bit of teeth in the fact that we need these deadlines to be met. And the policy applies to basically anything that we have a deadline for. So charter reports, Title VI programs, DBE reporting, MIS for alcohol and drug and alcohol testing, all of that. So that's been the policy since July of 2018, and it's worked fairly well. But in the past year and a half or so, we've had a few agencies that have been a little more lax on meeting deadlines. And so in the last 18 months, we have had a couple transit agencies had their STA funds held for 17 months and 14 of those months, respectively. We had another three that in 6 times over the last 18 months had their funding withheld until they became compliant with their reporting. There's another three that had 3 months held, another four that had 2 months held, and then one had 1 month held. So in all, I think that adds up to like 8, 11, about 13 of the transit agencies over the last 18 months have had STA funds held at least once. So that leaves about 22 that have never had it held over the last 18 months. So this does not affect or has not affected the majority of the transit systems in the last year and a half. But for those where we have had consistent issues, we do need something a little bit stronger in our policy so that we can get the reports that we need to be able to do our reporting to FTA or to the state or whomever. So we did need to beef up this policy a little bit. So the updated delinquent reporting and contract non-performance penalties policy is set to go into effect January 1st of 2026. We sent this out to all transit managers on November 19th, and it applies to any reports or data deadlines. So at the bottom, you'll see a list of those at the bottom of the policy, but it does say including but not limited to, just in case we missed one or a new one pops up that, there's a new report or something that we have to get done. So what this added was basically in the fourth and following months. We added another bullet there of what would happen. So I'll kind of go through these changes. So the first month following the deadline, there's no change. Second month, so the STA is held, but it's released if the delinquency is rectified. Second month following the deadline. So rather than a letter, like we said in the original policy, we'll send an email. So we're getting with the times here. We'll send an email to the transit agency's board of directors or the governing body. But otherwise, STA held just like before, and it will be released if the delinquency is rectified. Third month following the deadline, again, the STA funds are being held, but they would be released again if the delinquency is rectified. But we are now going to be sending a certified letter to the transit agency board of directors indicating that the system is subject to a permanent loss of STA funds if prompt action is not taken. So letting them know that if by the end of that third month, their transit agency is not compliant with submitting their reporting, then they are subject to permanent loss of those STA funds. But again, if that delinquency is rectified in the third month, the transit agency gets the STA funds back. No further issues. We'll carry on. But in the fourth and any subsequent months following the deadline, all the STA formula funds held to date will be distributed to the Iowa transit systems in the following fiscal year using the STA formula allocation. So we will collect those held funds, and then with the next year's formula allocation and formula payments, we would then distribute those funds out to all 35 transit agencies. So it would be a permanent loss of STA formula funds for that delinquent transit system. The withheld FTA, so that doesn't change. We are still holding FTA, STA special project, and PTIG funds, but those would be released to the transit system once the delinquency is rectified. So any capital or federal operating funds would be released back to the transit agency. So it's only STA formula funds that would be permanently lost if this delinquency should carry on for more than the 3 months. So those are the changes that are coming to this policy. We did have our Attorney General review this, and all of this is on the up and up in compliance with our Iowa code and administrative rules. So it's just we needed some more teeth to add to this so we can get the reports we need to do our own reporting in a timely manner. So in conclusion, this is a policy we hope to never need. We hope to never, ever have to use even the first month of the STA holding. But we did see that need, like I've explained, to try to incite a little more compliance in a more timely manner. So just keep in mind, no funding is permanently taken away until 4 months after the deadline. With the effective date of January 1, the earliest that STA formula funds would be permanently withheld would be May 1st. And that's if a small urban or regional transit agency neglected to submit their quarterly charter report to DOT by January 25th. So there's an example that I wrote out here where the charter report is due January 25. So February 1st is the first day of the month following the deadline. So STA formula funding would be withheld, but returned once compliant if that charter report was completed in February. March 1st, STA formula funding withheld again, but returned if compliant that month, and email to the Transit Agency Board of Directors. April 1, again, STA formula funding withheld, but returned if the deadline is, or the report is turned in, and certified letter sent to the Transit Agency Board of Directors alerting them of the permanent loss of funds if no report is submitted by May 1st. So it's after May 1st and beyond that the STA formula funding would be withheld and not returned to the transit agency, and then included in the STA formula funding to all the transit agencies the following fiscal year. So that's an example for you. Hopefully that would explain things a little bit better as to how soon this might take effect. So now I'd be happy to take any questions on this policy if anybody has any. And also want to point out that we are always looking for topics for future transit tidbits. So if anybody needs anything, please submit that to us so we can get a transit tidbits worked up to show everybody. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
All right, thank you, Kristen. And I will just point out, we do have another transit tidbit session in a couple weeks. Brent will be presenting on our consolidated app process. I'm going to start first then with the questions. There's a couple questions in the chat. First question is, why do you think so many more delinquencies are happening?
I'm not sure of that. And it's really only 2 agencies that we've seen where this has become a problem. It's not across the board. We have held funds prior to 18 months ago, but that's the data we looked back at is the last 18 months just for the snapshot in time for why we were feeling like this needed to be implemented now. But I am not sure why this might be happening more often with a couple of the agencies. And Amy, I can read the next one. If the reports have been submitted, but changes are requested from DOT within the 4-month window, would they receive or oh wait, I combined 2, sorry. If the reports have been submitted, but changes are requested from DOT within the 4-month window, would the funds still be taken away? No. So if the reports are submitted and it's just a Q&A back and forth between the DOT and the transit agency, no, technically the report is in, so we would not be taking away the money. So no, it would still be returned at that point. So the next one, have any delinquent agencies asked and received retraining for reporting? No, they have not. So we are always open to that, and perhaps that is something that could happen. So if anybody feels like they need retraining on reporting, please let us know. We're happy to do that. If it's something you're having difficulty with, we can sure help with that. So not a problem on that. So if the, let's see, on chapter 6 of 2 CFR part 200, audit for nonprofit, July through June, says the due date is June 30th. So this is our annual financial audit. Yes, so for the audit, yes, surely, if you, so our fiscal years do run on the state fiscal year, July through June, so you have a full year to get your audit turned in to the auditor of state. So yes, there's a full year to get that done by the following June 30th. So that's when we would be checking on that. Any other questions that might not have been clear? Okay, well, not seeing any and not seeing the telltale little dots on the screen for people typing. Oh, will the letters provide what report is delinquent? Absolutely, yes. Sherry, we would make sure to let the board know what report is delinquent so that the board knows and can follow up with their transit manager on that. Absolutely. So I think with that, we do aim to try to keep these transit tidbits just little, like it says, tidbits of information. So we would probably don't need to keep everybody. But we appreciate you joining us this morning. And do other state DOTs have this issue, or is it unique to Iowa? I am not sure about that. I haven't asked. I'm guessing it is not unique to Iowa. So but I have not asked, but I will be at a conference next week and can ask some of my colleagues and see if they have that issue. So, yeah, it'd be good to know if other DOTs deal with this and what they do to solve that. So that's a good point. I can ask around next week. All right. Well, if anybody has any questions, further questions, you can sure send me an email or give me a call and we can talk. Is there a listing of the deadline somewhere for confirmation? That is in our transit manager's handbook, I think is what you mean, Christina, where we have, let's see, go back to our, so this is just a screenshot, but in our transit manager's handbook, we do have a calendar as a chapter number, and I don't know if that'll stay the same with Jamie's updates, but the calendar should still be in there somewhere. So we do have our deadlines all outlined in our transit manager's handbook. So that's where those are located.
And also, we do keep, when we send out our quarterly newsletter for transit, we do include the next 3 months worth of calendar deadlines in that newsletter for people to look at as well. So, but you can obtain it anytime on our website on our transit handbook. It is in there. So we have two different spots, just the most current and of course the entire thing in our handbook. So there's two places you can look for it.
Good point. Thank you, Amy.
Mm-hmm.
Right. No problem, Christina. Glad you could join us regardless. All right, everybody. So please join Brent later this month with his transit tidbits. And again, I'm happy to take any calls or emails on this if you have any other questions. Otherwise, this will go into effect on January 1st. So, yeah, have a good holiday season, and we'll talk to you all and see you all soon. Thanks.